This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manassero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manassero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast, and subscribe. Well, we have an exciting show for you today. This is an area that those of you that listen to this show know that I feel very strongly about, and that is the role of inspections to real estate investing. Very, very important. Just by the happenstance here, I got a cool email here from a guy who was an inspector who happened to listen to a show that I did just recently. And as I conversed back and forth with him, I thought, gee, this guy, I'm talking about inspections. Why not have an inspector talk about inspections and what's involved? I thought that would be so much more valuable than my rambling on. So who I'm talking about is a gentleman named Scott Spaulding, and he is the founder and president of Blue Ribbon Home Inspections, LLC. Now, he was in the high-tech field for about 25 years and needed a change. We all know about that, right? And about 5 years ago, Scott started Blue Ribbon, and he hasn't looked back since. He specializes in inspections in multifamily, floating homes, okay, this one we got to definitely talk about, and condos in the Portland, Southwest Washington state areas. Along with anything else that comes his way, he jumps in and he's all about inspections. So he's what is called a one-stop shop here, or a one-call shop for inspection services. Well, Scott, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Oh, Bill, this is a pleasure.
It is such a pleasure to have you on. This is just absolutely fantastic. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. After communicating with you, I thought this guy is very knowledgeable. He knows what he's talking about. He sounds like the right guy to come on and tell us all about home inspections and property inspections.
Well, it all started. I'm an avid listener of yours. And you, like you said, recently you were talking about inspections, and there were some information you had given out, and it's like, oh no, I need to write and at least say the inspectors out there, they're not just somebody that just says, oh, I'm going to be a home inspector today. I mean, nowadays, you do have to take a national test. Some states have their own proprietary testing besides the national test, and then you need to do continuous education. So, I mean, there's a lot going into being a home inspector, but it's just a matter of jumping in and being able to help the new home buyer or the investor kind of getting a general idea of what the property that they're looking at.
Well, just before we jump right into that, I thought maybe you could just share a little bit about your background. I mean, you're in tech. What area of tech, and did you grow up in the Pacific Northwest up there? And just so they can get to know Scott a little bit better.
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Eastern Washington. At the time, high school, I originally wanted to be a industrial designer, a graphic illustrator. Went to college. Architectural industrial design just wasn't my cup of tea at the time, and computers were coming into the light. At that point, I just jumped into the computers, and for the next 25 years, I was a IT director for two giant enterprises, a weight loss company and a uniform company. Some of them were franchised. 2008 hit and everything changed. And at that time, I just jumped in to be a field tech. And I considered the field tech being more like a firefighter. You were always putting, IT stuff. Anyway, I needed a change. And one of the blessings that I had as far as being a field tech is I had two clients that were real estate agents, multiple agents in their company. And, you get to hear, wow, what's a home inspector? What's this? Anyway, I found a gentleman that had 20 some odd years of experience of being a home inspector, and just kind of started shadowing him. And one thing led to another, and it was like, man, this is great. And took the test, did a bunch of education, then did some more shadowing for almost a year before I actually branched out on my own, and here we are today.
Wow, that's neat. It seems like, especially with your tech background, getting in, trying to understand sources of problems, coming up with, just analyzing, the whole analysis aspect of it sounds like it would be, so much more hands-on than just looking at a bunch of, code or looking at things that that are on a computer, as opposed to actually getting into this big building or whatever it may be, and trying to figure out its attributes as well as its problems, right?
Exactly. It's almost like going to the doctors, and you're going there to get a physical. The generalist there is going to look you over top to bottom, and if they do find something, then they're going to go to the specialist. That's pretty much an analogy of a home inspection. You're starting at the top, going to the bottom, looking for, issues, and if you find something, plumbing, HVAC. Electrician, you're going to go to a specialist or call in or recommend it.
Are inspections required for somebody to have, or is it always an optional thing?
It's an optional thing. It's they recommend it, but it's optional. That's some of the properties that I'll go through. It's like, you find a defect or something, and it's like, this could cost you $10,000, where your inspection costs you a couple hundred. So, it's an optional thing. And after you've found something that actually stands out or, brings it to the attention of the buyers, it's like, wow, I'm really glad I got the inspection.
Is there any situation where somebody would not have to have an inspection? Let's say just in trying to make a wise purchase decision, because a home, whether it's a single family or a multifamily property, those are expensive, and it's probably the biggest expense that a person has in a lifetime. So I would. For myself, I can't see, making that kind of an investment and not knowing for sure if this was a good buy or not.
Yeah, it's like almost an insurance policy almost. You're hiring me for my services to go and look at your property that you're about to purchase. I go through it top to bottom. All inspectors are supposed to go from the roof down or get all the systems in the house and write a report to say, hey, this is, for the age of the house and everything, it's, in pretty good shape, or, it's deferred maintenance, or these are the key things that, normally by the manufacturers recommended that, all your appliances at this age have, outperformed its lifespan. But as a buyer, first-time buyer, you want to know that before you go in. I mean, when you buy a car, you want to make sure that the tires are good, type thing.
Yeah, what are some of sort of the big areas that again, making a purchase, like if you're buying a car, you don't want to find out later on it's got a transmission problem, or it's got, something that you're going to have to take the head apart and, work on the engine. With the home, is it something like foundations? Is it, some of the mechanicals? So what are sort of the big items that people really need to make sure they know that these things are okay?
Oh, sure. So, the big ticket items are going to be your HVAC units, your AC compressors, your roof, your foundation, the plumbing. Those are kind of the main key things that you're looking at. I mean, you're looking at the age of the house. Are the appliances that are in the house, are they, over 10 years old? Are they going to, expire soon? The water heater, they only last for so long before they, go belly up. The roof, I mean, that's big dollars there, as far as what is the make of the roof? Is it the shingles? Is it architectural? And you just go through it, and those are the big key things that you want to relay to the client. Here's what is at this point in time that you're looking at.
And I would imagine too, up in your neck of the woods, it's mountainous. There's a lot of beautiful mountains and forests and so forth, and so you've got people that are building on grades or building sometimes on a cliff type thing. So I would imagine that those types of, and plus there's a lot of rain. Now, I don't know if Portland's the same as Seattle, but it's, where when you've got a lot of moisture, you've got erosion, things like that. Do you also look at the foundation, or is that sort of a different type of inspector?
No. So, you're doing a foundation check. You're looking for cracks. You're looking for, they call spalling, where the concrete is starting to deteriorate. It's very porous, and then you go in and you look. If you're in the crawl space, you're looking for water intrusion. How is the foundation? Is water coming in up underneath the foundation? Is it dry? Is there a vapor barrier? Are the ducts insulated? Are your water lines, are they copper? Are they galvanized? You're looking at all these things. You've got all these components that you're trying to, is that in good condition? Do you find leaks? Do you, galvanized is only good for 50 years, and it cuts down on the water pressure. And then as you move up through the living area, you're looking for, what is the outside siding? Is it hardy board? Is it Q111 wood? Is there dry rot? You're pretty much going through the whole thing. You get up into the attic and you look at the soffit vents, you look at the fascia. Is there a ventilation problem? Do you find mold or the organic growth up there on the backside of the sheathing? Are the bathroom venting just venting directly into the attic and bypassing, going outside of the ridge vents? There's all these things that you're looking at to get a giant picture and then condense it so that you can show, talk, and relay that to the client.
So your main focus are you to find those problems before that person discovers them after they've purchased, obviously, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you're trying to get them a view, a 30,000-foot view to what the house, all the components in there, and you just describe and show, and literally, go on a tour of the things that have questionable defects.
Gotcha. So you're not just looking, though, at things that are a problem now. Do you see like potential problems in the future and make note of those in your reports as well?
Oh, absolutely. Roof line. So when you're looking at a roof, you look at, the gutters. You look at, is the roof buckling? Is it curling? When the roofers put on the flashing, did they actually put a kick-out flashing? Is there step flashing? You look behind places that if it was hard for the contractor or the individual that installed it, and it was hard for him to put it or her to put that item in, that's where you want to look. That's where you'll find the defects. If you can't see the cricket behind the fireplace, was it put in correctly? Those type of things. That's where I seem to find a lot of the items out of sight, out of mind. You can't see it from the road, but with a remote camera or actually just walking the roof, you find these items.
Do you assess? Now, the roofs are a big one because somebody has to put a new roof on. I mean, that's what, 20, 30, 40,000, depending on the place.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's a big expense item. Do you, is it a role of an inspector to sort of assess the life of that roof? I mean, is that, it's got another
Yes.
5 years? It is. Okay.
Yeah. So let me jump in there real quick on that part there. So I divide the roofs in thirds. First half is, it's new. It's the first 5 years of it. And then you got the middle half, and then you got the last of life type half on there. And sometimes you look at it and you're like, wow, this looks like a pretty good roof. But there's never been a permit pulled, even though you don't look for permits. You're trying to get a bigger picture. I go up into the attic and look at what they used for the sheathing. Did they use OSB board or did they use plywood? If it's plywood, most of the time there is a date stamp coming from the lumber yard of when that was, put in the kiln or used. So from that point on, you kind of get an age of the roof. Then you look for the granules. Do you find it all in the gutters? Is it curling? Like I had said before, you look for the flashing type thing. But you look at it and it's in the first half of its life. It's in good condition, or, it's in the half part of its life, but there's not enough ventilation. And you look at, when you look at it like a ridge vent, you see this black plume around the outside of it. It's kind of like the aftermath of it heating up so hot in there. That's kind of the hot air coming out. I mean, you kind of get a lifespan of a ballpark of what the year is on the roof.
Now it sounds like you're working in an area that does get a fair amount of rainfall. I mean, compared to other parts of the country. What are some of the common problems and things that you really want to know about in a property that does have a lot of moisture like that?
From the roof down, you're looking at, water leaks. And you mostly see those when you're in the attic, looking between the joists to see if there are water leaks. Wanting to make sure that you don't see what they call efflorescence. That's that white, salty layer that you see on concrete. Means that the water's wicking up. There's no pooling of water around the foundation. Your siding is, above a certain height so that the water doesn't intrude from there. You're just looking for ways that your house, where there would be water penetration, where water could enter. That's what you're trying to find evidence that there may be that happening in the future, even though that there's no leaks at the time.
Now, there's sometimes stairwells, especially apartments, too, where that were constructed in wood frame, and they've got stucco on them. How do you know, for example, that there's not wood rot under there, and that may be a potential hazard, of somebody walking on those stairs?
That's a good question. So in the Pacific Northwest, we don't have a lot of stucco. We have what they call EFIS, which is the substitute, the version of it. And yes, with the EFIS it's not like the Southwest where it bakes out of there. A lot of times you find that when they installed the EFIS, they forget to put, or they patch up the weep holes, so the water builds up, and by the time you realize that there is wood rot underneath there, it's past the repair part, as far as a little fixing here and there. But as far as the water, the stairs, you're looking for the footers, the way that the stairs are at the base of the string. Are there footers for the posts that are holding up the deck? Anything that wood touches soil, you want to have a separation so that there's no wood rot out there.
Got it. Now, when you, let's say, drive up to a property and you're going to take a look at it, do you just, sort of just kind of once over scan the property? And when you do that, are there just some ever sort of red flags that just kind of pop out that seem like an obvious issue? I mean, there may be a million different things that you could see, but some sort of maybe common red flags that sometimes you can just see right off the bat that is, that might be something that you're going to have to address or maybe dig a little deeper on. Sure.
So when I roll up onto a property, I look for the appearance. How's the outside of has the lawn been mowed? Are there weeds? Is it, is it a vacant home? Is there somebody living there? And as you walk up the stairwell, you're looking at the craftsmanship of, was the outside porch? Was this a weekend project? How are the door frames? How are the window frames? You kind of get an idea of how the house is from the outside, but there are times that I've been totally surprised. I look at the outside and it's like, wow, this is really going to be a doozer today. But you walk in and it's like, wow, this is beautiful in here. I just kind of when I roll up on it is look at the outside. I take it that if it's not been mowed or appreciated on the outside, the maintenance has probably been overlooked throughout the systems in the house.
Earlier, when we were talking offline, you also mentioned, you do inspections for out-of-state buyers and even out-of-the-country buyers. Do you recommend, to buyers of, properties, whether it's home or investment properties, that they be there for the inspection to walk through with the inspector?
When I reach out and introduce myself to a client just before the inspection or a day or so, I encourage them to be there for the inspection or towards the end of this inspection. And even if you're a out-of-state buyer or investor, I still do the same thing. I reach out. But the thing is that, everybody wants to know, gosh, we had our inspection today. What was there? I don't really want to wait for the inspection reports. I actually use FaceTime on my phone, and I will have a conversation as if the buyer was there at the inspection, and we'll go through all the items that I've called out, and I'll even actually go to the place on the property and point it out so that when they do get the report, they already know what they're looking at.
Oh, that's great.
So, that's kind of it's pretty much being there. mean, granted, if you're out of country, sometimes the time zones are kind of funky, but most of the time it's just 1 or 2 hour difference, and it works out great. It makes it the buyers more informed, and actually the agent is surprised that you've gone beyond what a normal inspector would do at a out of state investors meeting.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I just, really recommend very highly to people is that when you do buy a property is that you try to be there in person. And if you can't, then, that you can't. But I just find that a lot of times, you get to interface with the inspector, you understand a lot of the things that they're seeing, and they can show you some of those problem areas that will show up in the report right when you're there. I mean, I don't care if you're buying, 300 units. I want to, I'd want to walk through those and see every single one of them, or at least have my team get through every single one of them. And I learn a lot. One of the sort of unexpected things that you learn in that process is actually meeting tenants in those properties too. You also get to see who the tenants are, how they live. There's some other benefits too, but I think that to me, it has been invaluable, is just spending the time with the inspector. Plus, I learn a lot about things, like, for example, I didn't know that, what were you saying, the piping that, only has a...
galvanized?
Galvanized has that sort of time period. And that it's, after that, it starts having problems. So that's good stuff to know.
Well, I mean, to me, as an inspector, I want to pass the education or what the person is going to buy. This is, galvanized piping, 50 years, and it's like an artery. It rots from the inside so that the water pressure, it just comes down, but you don't see it from the outside. You look at the outside of the piping, it's great. But when you do a water pressure test, it's pretty gummed up.
Man. So, as an inspector, have you ever, done an inspection where you basically saw something that was just, oh man, I would never buy this house? I mean, I know you say, mostly everything can be fixed, but do you ever kind of get to that point where you go, gee, this is not?
No, I use Google Maps to get to my locations, and you follow it, says left, right. Oh, you're here. Well, this one time I did that and looked over, and the house had been burned down. The fire department had put the plywood on the windows, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a great inspection today. Oh, I'm one house number off. But no, I've not run into a property that I've just actually had to say, unless you are a super handyman, this isn't for you. But I do tell first-time home buyers that, you are buying a project. Doesn't mean that it's a bad project. It just means that there's a lot of things in this house that, are going to be needing some TLC. But never to the point where it's like, oh man, just walk away. Right.
Well, as you've looked at, and I'm sure lots and lots of properties, have you ever encountered something that was just what I call sort of your biggest inspection horror story? Something you encountered in the course of the inspection, a dead body or a rat attacks you or something. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
So, I guess the two things, and one would be kind of like, oh my gosh, this is like a horror story, and then the other one. So before marijuana was legal here, I had founded a grow room underneath a house. It was high tech. It was like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. But the horror story was I was doing a quadplex, and it had been remodeled. It was like an old house. It had 5 different units in it, and the remodeling wasn't. It was kind of like a a weekend project type thing, but they had hidden the stairwell to go down to the basement. Nobody knew that there was a basement down there. And the only way you could get there is through the crawl space. Well, when I went through the crawl space, there was a 3/4 basement down there that was filled up with water. So it was a giant swimming pool with an old furnace in there and a lot of floating decomposing animals in there. And those are the ones where you want to go, it's never disclosed. It's, my house is good to go. No hidden secrets. But when you run into that, it's like, oh man, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, that'd be a little freaky. Wow. Now you do both multifamily and single family homes, right?
Correct.
What would you say sort of the primary differences in the inspections between the two?
Well, I mean, they're very similar. They share the same roof, pretty much the same foundation, but when you're in the individual multi-units, you're always looking for fire separation, security walls. Are they plumbed for individual electrical, or are they plumbed for individual water lines? I mean, there's a similarity, and then they're all individual. But those would probably be the two things that stick out as far as the difference.
Got it. Well, what and I'm sure that there are folks that kind of want to understand the process, and I thought that might be helpful here is to kind of share. First off, how do you find an inspector? And just finding one is one thing, but how do you know you've got a good inspector, somebody that's really going to do a good, thorough job for you? What are some of the things a person should look for, and where does that where do you look for an inspector?
Sure. I always encourage the buyer to do their due diligence. Go online, look at, what are my local inspectors? Look at reviews. I'm a member of InterNACHI. They offer their website. You can look up inspectors that do certain items, pool inspections, radon, sewer scoping. I mean, some of the systems you want to have checked. And then from that point on, it's pretty much picking up the phone and talking to them. Can you carry on a conversation? Do they give you details? Are you comfortable talking with them? Because I mean, they're going to go through this house, and you're wanting their expertise to tell you what you're getting. That would probably be the best way. Is to, as a buyer, do your due diligence. Get out there, call, look it up. That's how you seem to find a good one. I love talking to people that call and they want to ask questions. Pretty much, they're concerned of what is it's going to cost. But the more and more you talk to them, they find out, wow, there's a lot more out there. There's a lot more to a home inspection than just some guy, showing up and handing them a report.
Now, do you have a checklist, or is there a checklist people should have to make sure that they know what an inspection entails or should entail?
Yes, like I say, InterNACHI is a good reference. They do have a checklist, and it starts from the roof all the way down to the foundation. Or the crawl space of what an inspector looks at. I mean, I guesstimate that I probably touch 600-700 items in a house. I walk away with maybe 400 digital pictures. Not that those are all defects. It's just that items that, I go, there's multiple ways that an inspector creates his report. Some create the report as systems, the HVA system, the plumbing system, the foundation, the roof, whatever. I go through each individual room, so it takes me sometimes a little longer. I want to make sure that the windows all open up. The plugs are not just two prongs, but they actually have a ground to it. Ceiling fans. Then you're running the appliances. I mean, there's a lot of things in there, but there is a checklist, and it's pretty much going over all the systems in the house.
Gotcha. And you mentioned Inanachi. Is that those are initials, I assume, for a national organization?
Yeah, it's the International for Certified Home Inspectors.
Okay, gotcha.
Or it's nachi.org online.
NACHI is initials. What are those?
NACHI.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so they could go there to find out not only to find local folks, but to also get sort of a checklist of those things. Okay, great.
The other thing that they can do, Bill, is that if they have a state license, which most states now have, you have to be licensed to be an inspector. You can go online and look up the person's license. Has it ever been suspended? How long has he had it? I mean, there's all those extra due diligence that you can do besides just going to a national website and looking.
Okay, so let's say we find the inspector. Okay, we've got somebody now. We've checked them out, maybe even checked references, whatever, and we have somebody we feel pretty confident in. Then pick up the phone, call the person. You want to schedule an inspection. Is that something that can happen right away? Also, you probably want to find out what the cost is going to be, right?
Yep. Most home inspectors, you can schedule whatever their time to have an inspection. Pretty much it would go as I'm a buyer. I call up. I find the inspector that I want. I find out what his schedule is. Most of the time, it has to do when you're buying a property, you have that due diligence period. Maybe it's 5 days. Maybe it's 10 days. That's when you want that inspection. You want the inspection to happen early so that any repairs that need to go on the repair addendum can be sent out and evaluated if needed. The inspector gets the property, figures out the square footage, comes up with a price, finds out, there's the home inspection. You also have the option to have a radon test, a sewer scope. There's all these items that you can add to it. In the Pacific Northwest, we have underground oil tanks. So you would want to have what we call a tank locate for you're not, getting a oil tank that has not been decommissioned. You want to know that it's there. It's just these small things. But yeah, you can schedule an appointment and have the inspection set up, ready to go. And then you can also have these other services added on.
Got it. And how long does the actual inspection take?
I go off the formula of an hour per 1,000 square foot. So, a 2,500 square foot house, I'm, 3 hours. You just you never know if something's going to, take a little extra time in the crawl space or in the attic or on the outside as you're inspecting it. So, just a ballpark. And
how long does it take to get the final report?
Usually the report is 24 hours.
Wow, that's fast.
I like the 24 hours. There are some inspectors that can give it to you before they leave the property. My thoughts is that, I'm walking away with all these pictures. There's a reason that I took those pictures. Not that there's a defect, but there was a reason I took the pictures because I want to go back and maybe do a little research on that before I send it out. And I do tell my clients is that, look, you're going to get my report. You're going to see a lot of items that I'm going to call out. Not that I'm calling it out because the defects are bad with the house. It's just that I want to let you know that, there are filters in the HVAC that you do need to change on a monthly basis. And at this point, they've been neglected. Or, the front porch, this porch that's 24 inches tall, it is a fall hazard if somebody just kind of like walks out your front door and falls over, those type of things, even though the report could come out right away and go, oh gosh, I forgot to put that in there. That would be a nightmare.
Right. Like with the report, there's going to be obviously areas that are going to be called out. Is it common for inspectors to make recommendations? Like, for example, if somebody asks, say, oh, wow, I don't know, I have to replace this, AC unit. Do you recommend somebody? Or I need to redo my entire plumbing or whatever. Is it common that inspectors make referrals?
Not necessarily. I don't like to make referrals because if I don't or have not worked with the person or company that I'm referring to, I don't, I'm selling my or giving my, expertise that this is a great way to go. But I do, if it's the electrical system or whatever, you're saying that, you do need to get a licensed professional to come and evaluate or give you an estimation. I'm calling it out because here's why I'm calling it out as the defect. And then, you're sending it now to a person, professional that's all they do is that's their wheelhouse when you're calling individual items out.
Gotcha. One thing's really interesting in your bio is that you also do floating homes, and I thought that was very interesting. So a floating home, I assume it would be like a houseboat or kind of thing, or an actual home that's like on a lake or something. For those types of inspections, do you need like scuba gear or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Really?
But,
okay.
yeah.
Why don't you explain that a little bit? That's really interesting.
So in the Pacific Northwest, we've got the Columbia River, we've got the Willamette, and all these sloughs and stuff like that, there's houses that are built on water floating platforms. They'll build it in a harbor somewhere and they'll float them in, and they're regular houses. The difference is that I do the inspections above the water line. You do have to have a scuba diver to actually do the inspection underneath the floats or the foundation that is, a giant float underneath there. So there's multiple inspections going on. It's a unique inspection because everything around the house is, you're looking now really for water intrusion. And you find that a lot of the time that the houses have a fair amount of wood deterioration, not enough insulation. It gets cold out there in the wintertime if you're out on the water. But yeah, that's a specialty as far as a home inspection. But it is very similar to a normal home inspection. There's just some other pumps, bilge pumps, or the way that the electrical is grounded, the way that the sewer lines are connected back to the dock itself. So there's a few things, but more or less it is a home inspection.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Wow. Well, Scott, this has been really, really helpful for me. I think that's, I can't stress enough with people the importance of the inspection. I had one property, I reduced the price, more than 20%, based on what I found in the inspections. Another one that I was about to buy, I was under contract. Basically came back there, we found all these deferred capital expenditures that really would major impact the purchase, and went back to the seller. Seller didn't want to really make any kind of allowances there, so I walked away. And so I think that inspections are just critical. Are there any sort of closing remarks or things that you want to address about inspections that you feel our listeners should know?
A lot of times I run into buyers that don't see the benefit of having an inspection, having a sewer scope, having a radon test. I mean, in the big picture, the home inspection and the services aren't that expensive, but not addressing them definitely could be a big ticket item of not knowing. Also the home inspectors, they're not always just there for the buyers. The sellers also hire me. They have, pre-inspections, walk and talks, things that, do a 11th month, what they call it, a 1-year warranty if you've got a new house. New homes have sometimes as many defects, even though that they're brand new, as an older home. So all I can say is, do your due diligence, and a home inspection is 90% well worth the money to have that knowledge.
God, that's great advice there. One of the things, for example, and I probably should touch this earlier, but like, let's say black mold. Sometimes you don't always see it, and it may be in a place that's not present. If somebody doesn't have an inspection, they might not even know they have it. But yet there are serious health implications, I understand, with black mold. Can you talk a little bit about that at all?
Sure. Black mold, I shouldn't say, I mean, that's narrowing it down. Just we'll do mold in the bigger picture. I mean, when an inspector, and it's not that he's just there to do a mold test or whatever, when he's in the crawl space, he's looking for the ventilation. Is there mold? And in the Pacific Northwest, there's always some type of surface mold. I mean, you get mold from brand new lumber that you pull from the yard. But the thing is you're looking for the aftermath of it that is ruining the foundation, the structure, health-wise. If you pop your head up into the attic and you notice that, all the sheathing is totally black and gray, and there's definitely, a mold or a organic growth, humidity problem up there, it's absolutely, the spores and stuff like that could be affecting the habitants in the part of the house. You do want to get that, addressed pretty much immediately. But there's always a fix for it as far as, mold remediation, finding why the ventilation in the attic or in the crawl space is causing this. It's just being able to have the knowledge of knowing that it's there and how to get rid of it.
That's great. Well, Scott, man, this has been a lot of great information, a lot of value. I'm sure there's a lot of folks that, might even like to contact you to find out more, to ask specific questions. What's the best way for folks to reach you?
I prefer just picking up the phone and talking. I'm sure that both of those.
That's just because Scott's an old dog.
Yeah,
here. We like to talk. We don't like texting. We don't like No.
It's just easier to pick up and doing that. Yeah, pick up the phone and call me. You can tell that I do love what I do, and I love passing on the information or ways that I can help. Or send me an email and ask the question. That's the easiest, best way. Awesome,
great. Well, Scott, this has been outstanding. Thank you. But we have a tradition here, and you're from the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of wolves, coyotes, other, lots of dogs, right?
Yes.
So we're just going to ask you to close us out with your best old hound dog howl. Are you up for it, Scott?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's do it to it.
Okay. Oh!
All right. That was good. Man, well, thank you, Scott, and thanks for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate it.
Hey, I got to thank you. You have the information that you're giving out to the listeners, and what a help. I'm glad to at least be part of it. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Scott. That's very kind of you. Well, I also want to thank all you Old Dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. So please note everything we talked about. And there's a lot of stuff. There's going to be some links. There's Scott's contact information. A lot of key things that you need to know if you're buying a property. If you're buying a property, you want to know about inspections and what's involved, and you got to do it. So that's going to be in the show notes at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog, and you're going to look for the episode with Scott Spaulding. Well, that is the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.